welcome to the Roar podcast. We are so excited tonight to be with you. Let me introduce our panel of guest speakers tonight. We have leading us off Catherine Legg, and she will be speaking to identity theft and recovery. We also have on our panel Dr. Marina McLean and Halston Parks. I'm Destiny Yarbrough, and I'm your host tonight. Let's jump right into the Roar podcast. So, Catherine, let me ask you, how does your identity get stolen? Speak to that a little bit.
Well, as I reflected on this, because I'm just about identity, and I think that this goes with our roar so much to be really original and authentic. We have to know our identity. And when we're early in life, very often our identity is stolen from us in our innocence before we even recognize that we're going to have an identity someday. Someone will speak into our life, like a parent or a relative or a teacher. Even as we get older, our peer group or a boyfriend or a husband will start to say things to us that we absorb as a part of our identity. And we start to operate off of that information as though it was our real identity, which has been stolen from us. Or we begin to trade or compromise what we know to be our identity. And we let go of pieces of ourselves little bit by little bit. It's, kind of that slippery slope thing where we just knew who we were once, and then all of a sudden we're in a position where we're like, who have I become? I'm not who I thought I was going to be, or even wanted to be. Or, we'll have a plan of our own, and we'll just say, I'm going to be such and so. And I can't say how many times I've heard people say, I started off in college in one major because that's what I was going to do, and then I ended up switching, or when I got done I didn't even use my degree because I had an idea, I had an identity idea, and it turned out that had really nothing to do with who I was meant to be or who I was going to become. So we can be the facilitator of giving our identity away, but I think more often than not, it's an unconscious unawareness, things that people speak to us, and we start to frame our lives and our identities according to what other people say. Even me, as one other area too that hits us very hard is our culture and media, and what they say we should be and who they say we should look like and behave like and have, by certain ages, those identity factors that really have nothing to do with who we really are.
Catherine, I've known you for a long time, so I've seen the different phases of you. But I want to ask you this question. Who and how did you develop your true identity?
Well, there came a breaking point for me in my perceived identity and the road that I traveled down. And when I came to that juncture where I had placed my identity in a relationship and was, attempting to keep that relationship going, and it wasn't working. And then I decided, well, I'll just make my own decisions and form my own identity. And if I run into problems, then I won't have anybody to blame but myself. But even that wore out. And there was a point where I had to, I sat at my kitchen table. I was a very mature adult in my 40s and just surrendered my life to Jesus Christ. And at that very moment, everything just started turning around. And, when you've lived that many years with thought processes that have corrupted your identity, lies that you've told yourself, things you knew were the truth, and you trade the truth for a lie in order to maintain relationship. There was a lot of work the Holy Spirit had to do on my life to release me from those things that had been spoken into me, those things that I was speaking to myself. And then, as I grew in my identity, I started to realize that there's a whole nother dimension to my life, that spiritual dimension. And I started to hunger after, so what is my identity in the spirit? Who am I as a spiritual person? I could see myself in a mirror, so I knew who I was as a physical person. I understood my intellect because I was a well-educated person, but I really did not understand in the way that I need to understand in order to step into my full identity, my spiritual identity. And so there's I have lovely God stories about how he helped me to recover what had been stolen from me.
Very good.
Today, Catherine, in the world we live in, there's a lot of confusion when it comes to identity, especially in my generation. There's just so much confusion when it comes to even middle school, high school, college-age kids. How would one find their true identity? If someone was asking you, what would you tell them?
Well, to me, it was like, I love mysteries. Let me just say, I love mysteries. And so, because I was older, and I realized the more that I walked with God, that he was beginning to show me mysteries about myself. He was beginning to show me how things fit together. I was a puzzle, and there were different pieces of me, and how did all of this work? And I think it doesn't really matter how old or how young you are, that there are different parts of us. We're not just a single faceted individual. We're complex. We have emotions, and we have desires, and we have thoughts, and we have people that we're drawn to. And so for me, it's like an unlocking of a mystery, and part of that was to surrender. I had to begin to surrender what I thought about myself, what I'd been told about myself, and I had to surrender that, and that's a challenge, because we like, to hang on to the known. I've heard this said, people will stay in hell because they know the names of the streets, and that familiar horrible for some is better than the great unknown, the uncertainty of I'm not that anymore, but then what am I, or who am I? So you have to be willing to surrender. You have to look at what your life lessons have been so far, because I think there's many clues that we're already operating in our identity, or have had a period of time where we've been operating in our identity. I have some good examples of that in my own life, in that I played the flute from the time I was in the 4th grade, and faithfully played all the way through high school and on into college, and had started majoring in music. And I was in that precious relationship that I wanted to sustain, and I knew that there was 2 ways to go: be a teacher or become a professional. And my family of women were teachers, and I was like, not going to be like everybody else in my family. So professional. Well, professional in my head was like 8 hours a day playing music and traveling the world, which sounds wonderful if you're not trying to keep a relationship going. And I just...
Thank you so much for joining us on the Roar podcast. I'm Destiny Yarbrough, your host today, and joining us on our panel was Catherine Legg, Halston Parks, and Dr. Marina McLean. I pray this blessed you tonight. Let's roar together.